War. War never changes. Coming in at number 3 is Fallout Wasteland Warfare by Modifius. Wonderful, wonderful game that really captures the Fallout flavor. Let's put that right there. So, Fallout Wasteland Warfare is a skirmish game, so you're not going to use a lot of miniatures, where you are going to be playing in the world of Fallout. So, if you're familiar with it, it has everything there. All the Fallout flavor is in this game. It's the number one thing I have here for what I enjoy about the game. So, at this point, if you're going to be jumping in for the first time, there is so much content out there. Whether you've played the very first Fallout to Fallout 76, everything in between, there is something out there for the Fallout that you enjoy. It started, and there's probably more with like the Fallout 4 universe here, but you're going to be able to find everything that you're looking for: death claws and the robots, ghouls, rad roaches. All of it is there, and wonderfully, wonderfully done as far as how they've captured it. So they've done that in the mechanics. So your special stats are there. The factions from Fallout are all here, so you can play the Institute, and if you just want to take some survivors, you can do that. The Minutemen, they are all here represented in the game. More, so they have terrain sets that you can buy that come in resin. You can buy some cardboard sets. You can, if you have a 3D printer and you like to print your own miniatures and terrain, FDM or resin, either one will be a good option. There's so much out there. They have different settings books, so you could go online and buy just the PDFs or hard copy books that will give you additional rules that you can again capture some of your favorite Fallout universes, or games within the universe. So everything from New Vegas is one of the newer ones, Nuka Cola World, um, playing up in the Boston. I can't remember exactly what that area is called. I believe that was Fallout 4, but it's all there for you. As far as gameplay goes, this has the best AI of all of the games that I've played. So before the enemies go, you're going to roll a die to see what they're going to do. And that makes it really dynamic, because even though you have a general AI rule set, depending on the miniature itself, every different kind of miniature has a card, and they may be more prone to do something else, but that die roll could really alter what they're doing. So it kind of gives it a feel of playing against someone else, some sort of intelligence behind it. Now, they're never going to truly copy. I don't think any game will truly copy playing against a human player, their unpredictability, their ability to think and adjust on the fly. But it really is refreshing to play a game where they took the time to think about it. The other thing is that it's really simple to implement, because it is just a roll of the die. And as soon as you understand what the actions mean, and it could be something as simple as they're prioritizing an objective this turn, or they're prioritizing a target, or they're going to move tactfully. You're going to see that when you understand the rules of the game. But that makes it to where you don't fully understand and can't predict. And you'll see in the two games I have above it, that's where Fallout has an advantage. So some of the cons, overall, can cost a bit, because there is a lot. And if you're going to want to get a lot, every box is going to cost you $35-$40 to get a few miniatures. So it really just depends on how much you're going to invest. You do need their cards and the miniatures, though they've made it where you could get a lot of the cards online for free just off of their site, or pay for PDFs for like a print and play type of thing. So and then they've bundled it up. I want to say it was about $5-$10 for all the waves up to this point, so you can get a lot for your money. The base box comes with a decent amount of stuff, but I wouldn't say it's really enough. It's enough to get you going, but you're probably going to want to buy, I'd say, 2 to 3 other boxes to get some maybe additional enemies that you can play on the table, or another faction or two to play against you. And then if you really like it, and this is the only game you get as far as a tabletop miniatures game, then just get as much as you want to get. But the second thing is that this is easily the most complex game. And I want to really stress that the other games I've mentioned on here, you could get to the table pretty easily, get a read through. Fallout is going to take you a while to get through the book, and then you're going to refer to it a lot, maybe. And again, it depends on your experience level with, complex games. And the reason for that is because they wanted to include a lot in it, and it's all there. I'll show you this token box. There are tons and tons of tokens to represent your armor, being on fire, radiation. There's tokens on the board for things you could pick up and scavenge, and objective markers. There is so much. Now it does a great job in the rulebook to organize it and make it understandable. So it's more of just the volume of rules as opposed to maybe it being really difficult to understand. But everything you need is in it. Comes with all the rulers and this book here, which is pretty thick for this kind of game, but it's well laid out, beautifully done there. But just know that as you go into it. The other thing is the physical components. There are a lot of physical components to the game. Again, versus some of the other games I have on here where they've taken a lot of what Fallout does and puts it on charts or fits it all in one book. Um, just some text that you roll on, a note that you make on your character sheet or something like that. Fallout has these all of these tokens, cards for all the different events and things like that. Thick stack of cards here. There's another one, and you have to take all of this out or have it nearby, put it on the table when you're getting ready to play. So it can be a little bit of a setup, and then you got to set your table up and everything like that. But again, if you love Fallout, a lot of those things might fall to the wayside for you and be almost a non-issue. But for me, for the flavor and my willingness to want to jump into this deep game, I absolutely love Fallout Wasteland Warfare at my number 3. So number 2 makes me a little bit sad because it's a bit nostalgic. This was the very first game I played in terms of a miniatures game, solo. When this game came out, the idea was so cool to me, um, that it made me explore other games. And I'm talking about Rangers of Shadow Deep by Joseph McCullough. You can find this a lot of places. When I got it, I believe it was only on like Drive Through RPG, and now there's printed versions that you can find by you guessed it, Modifius. I have this awesome. I believe this is the deluxe version. I had it printed out in a binder, but anyway, so Rangers of Shadow Deep is a I would call it a fantasy adventure game where you're going to create a main character, a ranger, and you're going to take a group of other heroes that are going to come with you, kind of your crew. They're not as powerful as your main character. You're going to go out on missions, and every mission is unique. Unlike other games where you might roll a random objective for that specific session, Rangers of Shadow Deep takes you through a specific story from the very first book. There's 2 campaigns in there, and then you can take that same character, get some expansions, and play that as well. And there's a lot of fan made expansions out there. Your character is going to have a full character sheet that you can photocopy, or people have made a lot of their own cool ones. You have a bunch of skills on top of your regular movement, shooting, defense, and that kind of stuff for miniatures games. Rangers of Shadow Deep brings in the RPG element where it has a whole list of skills as well, and you have gear that you're picking up throughout the games, and it really brings a full RPG feel to the game. My first pro that I have on here is the progression and the narrative that comes with the game. When you see my number 1, you'll see exactly why I really love the narrative part of it, because it really brings you in. I think if a game can make you emote in some kind of way, good, bad, or get invested, it's so cool to me, which is one of the reasons why I love tabletop games. Rangers of Shadow Deep does that. It takes you through a story, and it's a specific story that you go through, as things unfold, you'll see what's happening, and you could draw a map or print one out that's online. It really fleshes out the world and what's going on, and I really love that about this game. And even doing that, it still makes it replayable. Joe's put a really cool system in the game where you're rolling on this event table, and different things will happen every time you play. So there might be some things you have access to and don't have access to. In future plays, you roll up a whole new character and go through to still make it, new and refreshing every time you play. There's tons of content for the game. I've got all of it because I love it. So there's these nice books you can get now, or you can buy PDFs if you don't want the actual books that come with a lot of different options. They will add spells to your character, additional companions you can have. There's an entire expansion just for adding, it's called Menagerie, for adding like a creature companion. So if you want to have a little monkey that follows you around, or a tiger or a bear or something like that, it's really cool. And then possibly the best one, even though I said that this is a narrative game, Joe introduced this expansion, which added a dungeon crawl um, aspect to the game. So now, if you want a different feel every time, or if you want to just kind of do a one-off, not do anything story specific, you play the Dungeons Dark expansion. The rules are simple. It is a D20 system, so you have a target number like D&D, where you're trying to roll to this, to see whether or not you hit. You roll that number, and such happens. Most of the time, it's going to be an attack roll where you actually roll two dice at the same time. The enemy and the hero, whoever has the higher roll with their modifier, will be the one to deal the damage. So that is very simple. And then even the AI is dead simple. They kind of have a target on the board, but generally they're going to be going towards whatever enemy is closer, you being the enemy. And so it's really just straightforward, and it moves along really quickly. After your first game, you'll be really comfortable with it and be flowing through the games. The other thing I really love is the event system, as I mentioned, where each time you play, it's going to be a little different. All you need is a set of playing cards, just regular playing cards. Of course, I got some really cool ones for this game specifically. Every time you draw one, an event will happen. Something might spawn on the board, like more enemies, or something like a building will collapse, or something just kind of crazy will happen on the table. And that's what makes it replayable, because he usually has more things than you're even going to see. And so every time you play, it can work out a little bit differently. You might get a key to a different entrance in the next story, or the next mission in the story, that lets you skip a room or two or something like that. So it's really cool. To the cons, because it's a D20, just like D&D. One thing I don't like about D&D is how swingy that D20 can be, where the averages aren't there. So you could get wrecked in the first scenario by some giant rats. Your main character can have a couple bad rolls, and that's it for them. It kind of comes with the territory, and you could say that about any game with dice, really. But in this game, it can be really frustrating. It is demoralizing and really frustrating when you have a good plan, you built your team well, and then you just have a couple bad rolls, and this zombies are whooping you. So this is my second con. The AI is pretty predictable. They are almost like zombies out there, compared to some other games, or like Fallout, as I mentioned. They just are coming at you. They don't really. They might have a couple of tricks up their sleeves in some of the scenarios, but in general, it's pretty straightforward. And you're trying to rush to get what you need to get done and get out of there, while the enemies are just they're going to keep coming. So it's almost a race. It doesn't take away from the game, but it is something that you want to be aware of. And then the last thing is, some skills aren't often used as others. So there are some skills when you're playing, that you might have taken that sounded like a good idea, and then you find as you play, it's really not. It doesn't really affect things as much. But I find what's really cool, though, is because you build a party, you have other members of your group. It'll balance it out. Give them some of the skills you may not use as much, or even after you've played once or twice. Mix that up. make your main ranger even beefier, something like that. That's my number 2. That's Rangers of Shadowdeep. And coming in at number 1, the game I would keep and get rid of the others if I had to is 5 Parsecs from Home, once again from Modiphius. They have found a niche in solo tabletop gaming as a whole, miniatures games, you name it. I love this company, and these games are all different. 5 Parsecs from Home is their sci-fi version of this game system. There's also 5 Leagues from the Borderlands. I have that as well. Don't like it as much. There's reasons for that. But 5 Parsecs from Home is a miniatures agnostic solo wargaming adventure game. Very similar to Rangers of Shadowdeep is that it is a whole campaign RPG feeling, RPG light war game where you take again a crew. You're going to have a main character and crew that come with you that have different roles on your team. They should be decent at combat, but they have other things that they can do in the game. You play out a scenario on the table, regroup. There's a whole phase of getting new missions, going shopping, having different events or encounters, uh, planetary travel, fixing your ship, all that kind of stuff. Very Guardians of the Galaxy feel, at least that's what I imagine when I play. But there's an XCOM kind of feeling to it as well. Um, I'll try to show some pictures throughout this video of the art and everything. Very evocative. Of course, I open up to a picture to no art, but it's very evocative. It's got this cool cyberpunk futuristic feel. Let's say though, you can flavor it however you want to because it's miniatures agnostic. You might have a bunch of 40K miniatures, or you might have some Stargrave miniatures, which is another game by Joseph McCullough that I don't have. But there's ways you can get sci-fi minis, whatever your favorite miniature shop is, and use them in this game. So getting to the pros and cons. So for one, as I mentioned, the solo campaign system, your characters are going to progress. You're going to get new gear. You're going to find different things on the mission. Having getting better guns, getting credits that you can use to upgrade your ship because that's going to matter. The randomized story elements. As I mentioned with Rangers of Shadowdeep, I really love games with a story. And even though this doesn't have a specific narrative, there is an emerging narrative that comes through as you play. You can fill in the gaps in your own head of whatever lore that you want to. I've played a campaign completely in the Star Wars universe. If you have enough minis for that, you can definitely play that, and a majority of your encounters can be with stormtroopers. But of course, depending on the collection you have, it's gonna affect the kind of adversaries that you go up against. The RPG light elements extend to your crew. One thing I really have to express about this game is how attached you get. If you've ever played XCOM, any of the XCOM or the newer ones specifically, when you play with permanent deaths, your crew dies. You've named this one guy or girl, and they've come with you through so many battles, and then they finally die, and there's nothing you can do about it. That really hits hard. So same thing happens in this game. You have crew members that will accumulate experience points and level up, and they're there with you, and it really gives you yeah, it keeps the miniatures on the table from being expendable because they feel like part of the team. And so they'll even have their own personalities and traits and things that they roll when you create your crew that add to their backstory and just really brings everything together between your missions, the crew that you have, the events that happen. You'll start to put together something that you could even sit down and write a book about after it's all said and done. So it really is emergent and immersive in that way. Going from there, it's very replayable. It's absolutely replayable because without going too much detail, which I will when I do a review of this game, there are a lot of elements that are going to be rolled on that will generate who you're going up against and the things that are going to be happening. So much so you cannot play a campaign that looks the same as any of your other ones that you've played previously because there's so much in here, going from even just your crew and the makeup of that crew to the kind of adversaries that you're going to be going up against. You could even just play against a few and maybe make it more of a compressed campaign where you're playing against the same enemies over and over. There's so much there, so much that you're going to pick up, so many weapon options and all kinds of things. The kinds of battles you're going to be doing on the table. If you have an extensive terrain collection, that's going to add to it. So it really does well for repeated play. As far as the cons go, this one's a light one, but there's a lot of rolling in between. The actual battles on the table. There's going to be a lot of flipping through the rule book, figuring out where to go. Now, once you get used to it, it's not as bad, but there's a lot of it, and you may not like that. Again, this is a number one for me because I enjoy that part of it. The AI is predictable. Again, a lot of these games are falling into that category, but it doesn't take away from it. There's rules in there for the different types of enemies you're going to be fighting up against, and you could even add your own, thinking to it if you feel like it's a little too easy, and maybe just use the rules in the game as a springboard and add some, additional intelligence to when you're playing the enemies. And for my last con, I have that it's very swingy as far as the difficulty. Now, that's different from having a swingy system like a D20, where if you're trying to roll the number, you could have really bad rolls, even though there's math there to give you, a certain percentage of what you might roll. The randomness in the enemies you're going to be facing against and their numbers can make some of these scenarios a lot easier, and you'll be done in a few turns, or really tough and you get wiped out in a few turns. Or it's strung out. Most games will be somewhere in the middle, but it can be a little frustrating when you set up a whole table. Maybe you put out a whole entire city and you've got elevation and all this kind of stuff, and then you're done in a few turns. So that can be a little frustrating. But because of the combat working with the D6s, with any game with dice, as I said, it can be they can bite you in one game. However, just based off of those rolls, tactically speaking, I think this isn't too bad. There are some things you can do to mitigate it. Part of the mechanics of the game is getting close enough to have a higher accuracy of a shot. So to me, that offsets that. However, as with all these, I did want to bring it up in case it's something that might frustrate you. You heard it here. So that is my number one, 5 parsecs from home. If you have any questions about any of the games, of course, I'm going to try to put as many links and stuff down below. I would love to talk to you more about these games. If you want to comment, they will eventually get their own, full-on reviews, so we could talk about them and I could show you them in more detail about why I like them. But this video is probably going on longer than I wanted to. But thank you for watching. Sub if you like it. Hit me up. Thank you guys for watching. Have a great day.